What is something that you were warned about when you were younger that you now feel was exaggerated? As an adult, I have some memories of my older brother doing things that were definitely not okay, but I knew him well, so it didn't even occur to me at the time that what was happening wasn't okay or that I even should tell somebody. It's okay now, but every so often I'll remember something that I've never remembered before and I'll be like, I guess that was sexual abuse. As a kid, my mom taught me about stranger danger but always included family and friends at the end. It took 15 years before I even mentioned to my mom that my cousin told me to touch him when I was 4. I didn't. She was quiet and told me my cousin peeped at all the women in the house when they bathed, including Grandma. Also, cannibalism was a huge concern in late elementary to early middle school days. It was highly unlikely we'd ever crash in the Andes or that our wagon train would get stuck in the mountains in winter, but for some reason all the kids in my school were concerned about it. Should we eat someone? Could we actually do it if we had to? Who should we eat first? The fat kid will keep, but we don't want the muscular guy to lose too much weight. We were pretty fucked up, I'm now realizing. I wonder if it's even possible for someone to find that record. Is it really permanent? Does a record of that principal's office visit still exist at all? Of course, the real permanent record is the shit people are posting online. That shit might end up actually coming back to haunt you decades later. I'm 35 and I am about 90% sure I could just lie about having a bachelor's degree. Literally nobody has ever asked to see my diploma or thesis or anything. By this point in my life it's just assumed you have one if you say you do, especially since I went to a really small college most people have never heard of. They'd never check that unless I was claiming a graduate degree maybe. My 8th grade teacher kept telling us how scary high school was and how unprepared we all were. She told us that freshmen were to be hunted at the beginning of the school year. She told us that we'd probably get beaten up just because we were new. She told us that we'd have to run from class to class because we'd be a target. She told us we'd all be back visiting her and saying how sorry we were and how much we miss middle school. Her source was her daughter who was like 3 years older than us. Fast forward to my first day of high school. I got assigned 2 seniors to show me around the school and be my buddy for the first couple of months. Literally one kid tried to mess with the freshman and like the whole school was like, dude, what are you doing? Fuck you, Linda. High school was alright and nobody got hunted. I had an identical thing with school in general. Whenever we're on the verge of graduation, elementary school to secondary school to college, they would always talk about how teachers at the next level would have a tough love, we don't care attitude. There were some elements of truth, but a lot of what they said turned out to be laughably wrong. I think it was just meant to scare the true slackers straight. Every year of school, we were told that we better get serious because the next level would be harder, culminating in actually being an adult with a job which would be hardest of all. You couldn't pay me to go back to the suffering I went through in school. Being an adult with a job is a breeze in comparison. When I started my job I didn't have a car, got off work at 2 a.m., went to the gym, then took the first bus of the day home at 4:30 a.m. A couple of my older coworkers were very upset by this and went to the boss, without speaking to me first, and demanded my schedule be changed. Because they were worried about me, the boss, without speaking to me, went to her boss and got my schedule change approved. I didn't want a schedule change. I have a sleep disorder and have to work at night, and I've been taking the city bus for about 15 years. The safest buses of the day were the first buses of the day. I was told I had to change my schedule and was not given a choice. They said I could switch to day shift, which begins at 5 a.m. So apparently taking the bus home at 4 a.m. is dangerous, but going to work on the bus at 4 a.m. is perfectly safe, because the imaginary murderers and rapists hiding in the bushes waiting to attack me won't bother someone going to work. They only bother people going home. I think that's their logic. Forced to buy a car because of some nosy bitch who never took a bus in her life and is afraid of the dark SMH and BTW when a coworker who lived 25 miles away had her car break down for an extended period of time. You know what I did? I went and picked her ass up and took her home every night. I didn't go to the boss and demand her schedule be changed. I live less than 5 miles from work. Interesting how the people who were so concerned about me couldn't be bothered to give me a ride. My 4-year-old niece lectured me the other day about not having a fire ladder in my second story and fire extinguishers strategically placed through my house. I mean, she's not wrong, but it still stung. Edit. Yes, I will be getting some more fire equipment next month. I'll be sure to show her so she knows her tiny voice got heard. Most useful thing I learned from the fire safety stuff was how to check if something was hot without touching it. Hold the back of your hand near it and you can feel the radiant heat much better than any other way. Handy for me who has to occasionally handle pieces of metal of varying degrees of hotness. We learned stop, drop and roll. I didn't pay much attention. Years later, in my 20s, I caught on fire, panicked and started running around, increasing the flames. Thankfully a friend of mine chased me down, tackled me and rolled me around until the fire went out. If I caught on fire today I'd probably still do the wrong thing, lol. My parents both smoked before having kids, and my mom raised me on stories about how the first time she smoked a cigarette, she coughed so badly that she threw up. It made staying away from smoking cigarettes pretty easy, because I didn't want to puke. Once I was in college I brought up the story to her and she blinked like an owl caught in the sunlight. Wait, you believed me? She said. I was just trying to get you to not smoke. If smoking made me vomit, why do you think I smoked for 15 years? Good job, Mom. I have a good amount of nostalgia for those days of mystery and mystique. Knowledge is great and all, and the world being more skeptical in general is probably a good thing. But the 90s were such a wild time where we believed the Bermuda Triangle, and that heavy metal musicians were all Satanists. In general there was a lot more belief in those urban legend things like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. We believed the Blair Witch Project was real. Kids would argue over which one out of WWF, WCW and ECW was actual real wrestling. And of course without the internet in your pocket to instantly disprove things, there were always kids who'd seen mythical episodes of shows, or unlocked a secret level of a video game, or whose dad had seen the Nintendo 128. Fun times. Grades are a metric. They are the closest thing we have to knowing if you've integrated the information into your brain. Lots of straight A students prep for the test and smash it out of the park, but they couldn't tell you what an integral means in real life, or identify a real-world problem where computing one would help. Something like hearing damage is somewhat analogous to an integral. The area under the curve is what causes hearing loss over time. That, while not a perfect representation, allows them to think about things in new ways and with different tools. The goal is to get you to integrate it into your thought process. Since we can't measure that, we measure grades. But people can game grades by being a study hard book only, but then fail at that, and vice versa. Having good grades by itself is of no use in the real world. You gotta actually integrate those concepts into daily thought processes. My mom said some of her friends growing up were told lies like that. One friend was apparently told if she touched herself she would go crazy. My mom told me that this girl did go crazy because she was obsessed with trying to not touch herself, like after she peed she had to make sure her hands didn't touch anywhere. And this actually drove her crazy. Of course, I don't know if this is true or just a wild exaggeration from my mom. But she did seem sad when she told me that, so I think it might have been mostly true. Drug dealers. I thought people would force that drugs down my throat until I was a broke addict. I have been offered it a few times in high school, but funny enough they were all very wholesome interactions. My favorite was a guy who I had never spoken to, who had just learned I was chronically ill, and he said that if I ever wanted to try anything he would give it to me for free and would help me to do it safely since he knew I didn't do drugs. It was just a very pure moment, and I will never forget that look of kindness and concern in his eyes. I've since been around many drug dealers. I think everyone in the Netherlands has, and have never been forced, tempted or manipulated to do drugs. My 5th grade teacher was this horrible Battleax who was obsessed with preparing us for junior high. There were no exceptions to tons of stupid rules whatsoever, and God help you if you merely forgot something. All it did was give me a horrible anxiety disorder I still battle nearly 30 years. Turns out 6th grade actually isn't that hard. Turns out that life in general isn't that strict. I don't know how many people can relate to this, but I have gone through some mental stuff ever since I started puberty. Mom forbade me to ever tell others about what's going on with me, even friends, because I might be perceived differently, become a social outcast, etc. I became a social outcast regardless because of feeling alone and misunderstood. And then the internet grew up to be a cesspit of suicidal memes. Turns out young people have mental issues in all possible colors. The requirement of having your shit together. Virtually everyone is in various stages of chaos, even if they give the appearance of having everything carefully planned. Didn't realize this comment would resonate with so many. I typed it without much thought, and I'm overwhelmed with the effect it has had. Glad it has acted as a motivator for some of you. Yeah, Dare had me worried I was going to be fending off drug dealers with a bat once I reached high school. I'm now inching towards 40 and have yet to be offered drugs ever, at any time. ETA. Holy hell, my most upvoted comment is about being drug-free. I guess Dare worked after all. This, and just pressure to do drugs in general. I was under the impression that some villains were going to actively try to force me to do drugs, and I know that is a legit concern when it comes to people slipping something in a drink, but this was in elementary school. Most of my life, people who offered me drugs were trying to be nice, and if I said no, they were happy to keep more drugs for themselves. Came here for this. It was drilled into me as a child that turning on the car light while driving would kill the battery, get us pulled over, destroy the car's engine, destabilize the Middle East even further, and cause the plot of Children of Men to occur in real life. My demos was in my 20s until I realized my dad just didn't want me being an asshole in the car by flicking the light on and off in our shitty used Mitsubishi Galant. Same. I remember my mother telling me over and over again that if I had bad handwriting, when I got a job, everyone would assume I was stupid. Similarly, teachers telling me I had to be good at mental arithmetic, because I won't always have a calculator. Now I have beautiful handwriting that I never use, and I do always have a calculator. Cracking knuckles causes arthritis. Lies. It's annoying to hear, but it doesn't cause arthritis. If you respect others, they'll respect you. Respect your elders. Such bullshit. People of all ages can be terrible people regardless of how they're treated. How likely it was for a tornado to plow into my elementary school. Pretty sure sitting on my knees in the hallway with my hands over my neck would not save me from a ceiling caving in. To my absolute surprise, I recently discovered that this is actually a problem for typical adults. Of course, as long as you work in construction and use heavy equipment, diesel engines and compressors generate vibrations, so soil can liquefy, and sink and suck excavators and bulldozers, even tracked ones. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Near me there is a big project of digging a canal trough C-spit and building waterway. It's 1.3 kilometers long and 120 meters wide. Obviously, it's mostly sand, and from local crews I heard they had to call hardware rescue specialists 4 times in the span of 2 years. One was a write-off. It got below groundwater level. We don't use calculators in class, and you should learn how to not use one. You'll never catch anyone working with numbers not use a calculator. I think some of all are taking this too seriously. The Reddit question was what was something that was exaggerated when we were younger. I understand that learning the basics in math is essential to developing an understanding of how simple things work, but some of my teachers were crazy strict. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate the knowledge they gave us, but dear Lord, they made it seem like calculators were banned at workplaces or in real life. Just wait till you go to primary school. You won't be playing games in primary school, you're gonna be working your ass off. Okay, just wait till you go to high school. You won't be playing games in high school, you're gonna be working your ass off. Okay, just wait till you go to university. You won't be playing games in university, you're gonna be working your ass off. Okay, I guess. I had to keep all my Dungeons & Dragons book hidden in my closet and keep it the secret from my mother that I played the game with my friends, especially the DM manual that had the big Freya on the cover. She was a religious nut, so I was also not allowed to watch Doctor Who and other fantasy stuff. She said they had evil faces. Do you also remember the satanic subliminal messages in music if you played a record backwards? She was also worried about that and only let me listen to certain music. My school and parents, your friends are going to pressure you to drink. My friends in high school, were not old enough to drink, or do you even buy booze? My friends in college, you are a child baby, you can't drink. My friends, now that I'm old enough to drink, okay, I have Pedialyte and Gatorade for tomorrow morning. If you don't want to drink, we have soda. Everyone pace yourselves and make sure you eat. If you get the drunk sads or the spins, then here is my dog to comfort you. When I was younger, my mother once told me that if I didn't start paying attention in school, I'd be lucky to end up as a roofer. Yada, yada, yada. I got my SH together academically in high school, went to a good college, went to law school, got a good lawyer job. The other day my mom reminds me of the time she said that if I didn't start paying attention, I'd end up as a roofer. My response was, Mom, one of my best friends is roofer. He got his GED, never attended college, and after a few years of hard manual labor he was managing his own crews and running his own shop. He could probably buy and sell me multiple times over and works half as many hours. I went to university, spent 5 years and $50,000 to get the degree, then back again to a college for another year to get a certificate, then lastly a technical school for 2 more years to get a diploma. Earned just shy of $100,000 a year now. My wife became an apprentice and went to a trade school. She no longer works on the tools, but has a cushy office job. Spent a total of 14 weeks in school. She earns just shy of $200,000 a year and has outearned me every year since high school. For example, as someone who was born in 2003, the dangers of the internet. Don't get me wrong, there are dangers and we should be taught how to be cautious about them. In fact, some dangers are becoming even more apparent. The thing is, the teachers giving these internet safety talks didn't even know that you could make your account private on the social media apps that they were talking about. Rather than their attitude being, you will die within a matter of days if you post any picture on the internet, it should instead be, there's no point in us pretending that you're not on social media, so here's how to not ruin your life with it. To be fair, some of the talks that happened later on were more like this, similarly to what they do with talks about alcohol, at least in my country. Yup, the internet has its dangers, but a lot of them have been hidden, blunted in more recent years. It used to be true that you could do something stupid and have the picture, video never go away, but, on the other hand, it's super hard to find a bunch of old forgotten stuff from around the time you were born. It seems to last up to around 20 years on the internet, not forever. That being said, the advice was true when I was in high school, not that any of the teachers, adults understood it yet. It was the Wild West back then, with dark corners behind every door rather than hidden away in the middle of nowhere with no address like it is now. This is one that's been around for a while. I was born in the early 90s and our parents were scared of the internet, and there were a lot of talks about the dangers of it all. For all the talks I ever had about the dangers of the internet, I only ever had one where the guy giving the talk leveled with us and just told us how to be on social media safely. not posting pictures of where you live, don't post that you're on vacation until you're back, don't give away overly personal information people could use against you, etc. Surprise, surprise, that's the talk I actually remember and keep in mind to this day.